Anyway, in the next episode, believe it or not, they actually have some slower pacing in it. Unfortunately, it also features the Rangers kind of being dicks to each other, either by forcing Dax to carry all their stuff, Tyzon being creepy around Rose, Rose ditching Tyzon because of his creepiness and not bothering to explain to the alien why his behavior is creepy, and apparently the Rangers not bothering to invite Tyzon on the picnic before now. Also, they spot Norg and think he's Bigfoot, and if they catch him, they'll be famous! 1. They've seen Norg before. Mac has spoken to Norg before. 2. You're the Power Rangers! You're already famous! You were on a talk show! But what's actually important is this comment.
It's only been 2 years since Mac arrived.
2 years since he arrived? And I admit, while I mocked the episode because of poor writing in regards to how the characters interact at the beginning, it's actually one of the better episodes of the season. The pacing is much improved over other episodes. There's some genuine emotion from Rose, particularly during a well-executed sequence where Rose thinks Tyzon has been killed by the Fear Cats. And the action is fairly decent. It's Overdrive, so there's plenty to drag it down, but sometimes you take what you can get. Speaking of, the next 2 episodes, a two-parter, are actually half-decent episodes as well. If there had been more episodes like these with slightly better pacing and better action, this season would be better. It also helps that it features a giant robot that's actually a giant T-Rex with an arsenal on its back, and premieres a new Zord, the Battlefleet Zords, which are literally an aircraft carrier and a battleship merged together. And of course it becomes a giant robot, why wouldn't it? However, the storyline actually advances in the next episode, Things Not Said. Mac is showing off some photos to the others of a fishing trip he took with his dad 12 years ago. Dax, being useful for once, notices that the tree casts a shadow, but Mac and his father don't. My god! Hartford faked the moon landing! Anyway, Miratrix and Camdor managed to upload a computer virus into the Overdrive systems, but fortunately the auxiliary systems kick in and deal with it. Except...
Good thing. Good thing. Good thing. Good thing.
Sometime later, Mac wakes up with his head on a table. It turns out that Mac is, and always has been, an android. Well, look at it this way, Mac. Now you get to hang out with the brain that couldn't die, Hitler's head from They Saved Hitler's Brain, and all the heads from Futurama. So yeah, Mac is an android. He's only 2 years old.
I remember breaking my arm when I was 5, going camping with you guys when I was 9, and the fish I caught.
Those were all memories I gave you. I wanted you to be like every other kid.
I'm not. I'm a machine.
I actually legitimately like this twist, and the acting and writing are very well handled. In fact, like I said, it's pretty much been foreshadowed since the first episode. Remember what Spencer said, he should never feel like one of his father's possessions. Plus, his genetically enhanced abilities aren't real, he just has superior strength as an android. Mind you, that makes me wonder why the hell he didn't display mega strength before he did that, but whatever. And while the foreshadowing is only more overt in the last few episodes, even having Mac in a cardboard robot costume in the last episode, I think it's well handled. Except for Hartford and Spencer saying Mac shouldn't be affected by luck a few episodes ago. Why the hell wouldn't he? If you think machines can't be unlucky, you've never seen a computer literally frying itself. Plus, there's the fact that there hasn't been any mention of Mac's mother during the season.
I was too busy with my work to find the right woman.
Why didn't you just make one of those, too?
Ouch. There are a lot of theories about this, especially in light of Hartford's own knowledge. Like I said, my personal headcanon is that Hartford funded and helped SPD later on, but he could have also worked with Lightspeed Rescue, giving him both the idea for his own Ranger team and the idea of creating robots, since Lightspeed had their own robot Rangers. Hell, harkening back to the "you're rich, buy an army," maybe his original idea was an army of robots and Mac was the prototype. But then Mac gained sapience and did things he didn't actually program into him. Creating artificial life like Hartford did opens up a lot of moral questions. Science fiction has been grappling with those questions since its inception. Considering we don't see any androids in either SPD or the Future of Time Force, I'd say it's likely Hartford never shared his discovery with anyone. Just think about the prejudices existing against sapient robots that could pass for ordinary humans, the possibility of second-class citizen status for them, a potential uprising or civil war, Battlestar Galactica, The Matrix, The Terminator. There's heavy implications here. And before you say this is Power Rangers, that wouldn't happen, I would remind you that even in the future of SPD, where humans and aliens are living alongside each other in peace, the Rangers were still prejudiced against a student who was a cyborg. But yeah, food for thought, isn't it? Sure, there was the Machine Empire, but all-out war between humans and robots and Power Rangers? Stow that thought away for a season or two. But on the much sillier front, Rose started working on a super weapon for the Zords, since no human could handle it, and Mac takes it to save the Rangers. What is it? It's taking the Sentinel Knight and making him into a battleizer. The Sentinel Ranger.
I'm ready if you are.
I've been ready for centuries.
Wow, that's creepier than Mac's head on a table. Still, this battleizer looks pretty badass, all things considered. Plus, the team is able to retrieve the fourth jewel before Miratrix and Camdor get away with it, giving them 3. Mac tells the others about his android nature, and they're naturally a bit floored by the news. But...
So, you're an android. So what? That doesn't change you.
So yeah, they're accepting and...
Heck, I'd love to be an android. Think of all the neat stuff you can do. You can play DVDs inside your head.
Shut up, Dax! However, things are not quite as easily patched up with his father.
Mac, we have a lot to talk about.
I've had a long day.
How about tomorrow?
That's gonna be a long day too.
A third Fear Cat joins the faction, Krazar. Tyzon naturally has a bad history with her. He says there was more to the cave-in that killed his team than he told them. He thought Krazar had been in the cave since she didn't leave along with the other 2 Fear Cats. And what's worse?
My girlfriend, Bella, was lost in the cave-in. We were gonna be married.
Yeah, let's pile on some more for the Tyzon angst train. Hey, speaking of angst trains, Mac and his dad finally talk, and it looks like things are going well when Hartford mentions it wasn't programmed in for him to become a Power Ranger.
You mean it wasn't programmed?
No.
I don't know how, but at that moment, you seemed almost...
Human?
Smooth, Hartford. I'm putting you in for a world's greatest dad mug. In the 2-parter Home and Away, Tyzon learns that Vela is still alive after destroying Krazar. The 2-parter also sees the end of the Fear Cats themselves, being destroyed in a very intense battle. Things don't get any better between Mac and his father, though, especially when Mac starts referring to him as Mr. Hartford. We then get our season requisite clip show way back when. But of course it's Overdrive, so it has the weakest setup I've seen so far. The Rangers are idiots and apparently have not been paying attention, thus they need to be reminded who has what. For the record, they have 3 jewels, Moltor has the crown, and Camdor and Miratrix have a jewel. This entire episode could have been avoided if somebody just had a whiteboard in the command basement. Still, they extrapolate the location of the final jewel based on where the jewels presumably landed on Earth after the Sentinel Knight threw them. Greece. Well, it landed in Greece originally, and they have to find where it went since then. They plan to use a ritual during an eclipse to ascertain its exact location, but Miratrix and Camdor are waiting for them at the site for it. Fortunately, they fail to obtain the chalice they need for the ritual. Camdor takes it well.
You have failed me time and time again!
I can do better.
No! You have proven that you cannot!
I'll become more powerful than you can ever imagine. And then you will kneel before me.
The Rangers engage the ritual, but Miratrix interrupts it and grabs the chalice, demanding power and energy. She transforms into a giant bird monster, as you do, but the Rangers are able to defeat her. The chalice transforms into some kind of plate, but Camdor steals it and berates Miratrix.
After all I've done for you, all for nothing.
Pity, isn't it?
Using the jewel he has in his possession, Camdor summons a giant energy ball to collect with the Earth and distract the Rangers while he goes for the final jewel. The Rangers go after it, save for Will, who has to deal with Camdor once and for all. Norg, having snuck into Camdor's lair, manages to take his jewel and bring it back to Flurius. Will, in the meantime, finally manages to destroy Camdor and gets hold of the plate, which leads them to Egypt and then a key to a sarcophagus and oh, who cares, final 2 episodes. First up, Nothing to Lose. Flurius begins destabilizing the volcano that Moltor is based out of, making him desperate to get the last jewel. After a fierce battle, the Rangers get the key they need for the jewel, but they realize that Moltor still has the crown and they have to get it away from him.
I say we just go there right now and take it.
Yeah!
If volcanoes were inhabitable, someone would have turned one into a condo before now.
And yeah, Mac goes to get it himself. Mac has some choice words for Moltor.
You were human once. But you lost that because you're obsessed with power. How could you give up the most precious gift there is? The gift of humanity.
Being human means nothing!
Guess that answers my question.
The volcano completely destabilizes as the Rangers come and retrieve Mac, heavily injuring Moltor along the way. Moltor flees to his brother, surprisingly bringing Vela in tow as well. When the hell did he take her prisoner? Moltor says he's ready to join forces again and hands over the crown. You can guess how well this goes.
Dude, that's just cold.
Hartford berates Mac for going to the volcano, but Mac says he doesn't care.
I went into the volcano because I'm the most expendable. If something happens to me, you can just build another. Mag version 2 or 3. I'm not human, and I never will be.
As Norg makes friends with Vela, Flurius learns that the remaining jewels are all at the mansion. And thus we arrive at the season finale, Crown and Punishment. Flurius and an army of chillers invade the mansion, and the place gets wrecked in the fight. Man, an entire army on his side! If only Hartford had one of those! During the fight, Flurius takes Mac and threatens his life.
Don't do it! Keep fighting! I'm not important!
You are to me.
And thus they hand over the jewels and Flurius withdraws.
I couldn't make that sacrifice. No matter what else happens to us, it'll give me another day, another hour. With you. I love you.
I love you too, Dad.
Flurius orders his chillers to kill Norg and Vela, and Norg is shockingly actually strong and agile in a fight. Huh. The Rangers head out to confront Flurius as he adds the remaining jewels to the crown. Unfortunately for him, he didn't expect extreme vehicles! So the Rangers morph and...
Overdrive, accelerate!
Oh. Huh.
Goodbye, San Angeles! It's a cold town.
Oh, but then they finish the morphs and thaw through the ice instantly, so screw that tension. However, Flurius puts on the crown and transforms into an even more monstrous being, now possessing the full power of the Corona Aurora. Flurius declares that no human can defeat him.
I'm not human. I'm just fine with that. You take the chillers! I'll go after the crown! Power Rangers forever! Power Rangers forever!
The Rangers defeat the Chillers, naturally with slow-motion back explosions, because that's this season in a nutshell. And Mac is easily able to separate Flurius from the crown. Mac decides to end Flurius once and for all, using all his power to destroy him. Unfortunately, that ends up severely damaging him. He can't be repaired. The Sentinel Knight appears with the Corona Aurora, restored to his original state, and claims that the crown is powerful enough to restore life. Hartford doesn't think that's possible because Mac is a machine.
A machine? He fought with heart, yet you're telling me he has none. You must be mistaken, for I saw it with my own eyes.
And yep, the crown is able to restore him. And more.
I can feel my heart racing at a mile a minute. Wait. I can feel my heart.
You know, every time Disney acquires another media franchise, people start throwing out Disney princess jokes, but no one remembers the time they bought Power Rangers and remade Pinocchio. And of course, with Operation Overdrive's mission completed, the Rangers plan to go their separate ways.
I've learned that being smart, it's something to be proud of.
I learned that you can make up a bogus life lesson that was never a part of the show.
Well, it's back to the track for me.
Ronnie learned nothing.
I've learned the importance of we, not I.
At the beginning of the season, nothing else was learned throughout the show.
Starring role in a movie?
Yesterday's news, Mr. H. Now, I want to direct.
Shut up!
Tyzon says that he's going to search for Vala, but coincidence of all coincidences, Norg arrives with Vala because there are only a couple of minutes left. I also noticed no one offered to come with them to help their friend, but I understand. Ronnie needed to go back to race car driving. As for Mac, he and Hartford are now going to go on adventures together, so congratulations! You managed to score 1 out of 6 character developments. Operation Overdrive is usually considered the worst season of the show by many fans. I'm inclined to agree, unfortunately. I will say that Overdrive had a lot of good ideas, it's just the execution is severely lacking. For starters, the treasure hunting and globetrotting aspect. I'll give them credit that they did visit a lot of varied locations all around the world. However, the failure lies with the fact that none of the places really distinguish themselves. It's just go to place, get thing. The idea of visiting exotic locales and actually being in a different environment from what they're used to is a pretty exciting aspect and can make for unique problems related to those specific areas and mythology from those countries. But the action set pieces need things to make them interesting and unique. That only happened once, when they visited Egypt and entered a tomb, which looked suspiciously like studio hallways covered in a bit of decoration, though A for effort, and the team is attacked by a swarm of beetles. It gave the place its own flavor of adventure versus any other place they visited, which was pretty much just ruins and maybe a pitfall trap or something if we're lucky. I don't know, perhaps it's expecting too much from a children's show with a very limited budget, but if you didn't have the ability to back up that integral part of the show, why make it a part of it? The treasure hunting, I'll grant you, was pretty interesting in that each week usually featured a MacGuffin item that led to the next piece of the puzzle, but again, the consequences are minimal, and we only get the vaguest hints of some of the mythology they were exploring. We got an episode featuring Thor and Loki, and just take a look at Loki here.
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose. Your world in the balance, and you bargained for one man. How desperate are you? You call on such lost creatures to defend you.
But that's pretty much it. We have Sparkling Shield of Whatever, or the Compass, Compass, as the monster keeps pronouncing it, of whatever, without going into any of the stories behind it. You get that maybe once or twice in an episode, otherwise it's just fancy pants name without any explanation of the history of it or why it's significant. It just feels like the show could be so much more. For crying out loud, there is a 2-parter set around Halloween, but Halloween does not factor into the plot of the episode, nor does anyone go into some of the legends around jack-o'-lanterns, trick-or-treating, or anything like that. It just happens to be Halloween. Strangely, the finale of the show, unlike the rest of it, is not really all that rushed, although that might be because there isn't anything of substance to it. There's very little actual story this season despite the jewel hunting. Again, it's MacGuffin of the week, maybe you'll get a jewel this time. And Florius's defeat is so damn easy after we've spent the entire season building up the power of the Corona Aurora. It just ends up being Mac hits Florius really, really hard, and series over. Another good idea that sadly failed to live up to its potential was the multiple villain factions. It's something we haven't really seen before, aside from Zed and the Camper of Evil versus the Machine Empire, and it gives us a chance to try some different motivations of villainy and more characterizations for them. A problem in many seasons when the main villain or the main general swaps out is that they don't really have much personality. Mordecai in Mystic Force was powerful, but he had nothing that made him interesting. Imperius was better and was actually plotting against the Master, but that ended up going nowhere. This isn't a recent problem either. If you look back to Lost Galaxy, Furio was boring, Trecheron was better but didn't really have that much going for him, and Scorpius never really did much until he died and the main villain became Trakina, who was the most interesting of the bunch. But here, the differentiations of the villains are pretty small in the grand scheme of things, mostly revolving around their methodology, strengths, and weaknesses. Miratrix and Camdor can create monsters, but lack the foot soldier armies that Florius and Moltor have. The Fear Cats are physically stronger than the other factions, kicking ass but good, and only the Mercury Ranger is able to go toe-to-toe with them at first. The first time the other Rangers are able to take them directly on is during Once a Ranger. The Fear Cats are also the ones most inclined to cause death and destruction, actively saying how they'll happily tear the Earth apart just for fun. The other factions want to conquer and rule the Earth. Moltor, Florius, and the Fear Cats can build giant robots, but the Fear Cats end up building the most out of the factions. Moltor is the most active of the villains, while Florius does the least. This can probably be chalked up to their respective natures. Moltor is impetuous, quick to anger, and quick to action without thinking things through. Florius claims at one point he's smarter than Moltor, which I certainly believe. Florius prefers to sit and wait, observe the situation, push things in a direction that suits him best, like when he would frequently contact Moltor and bicker with him. His plans are often unsuccessful, but in the end, slow and steady won out for him as all the other factions got defeated and he was the last man standing. The two's bitter relationship was apparently about Florius breaking Moltor's sled as a child. Seriously. Well, okay, they both want power and are both evil, and evil doesn't work well with other evil, but still, the sled thing is brought up in more than one episode. Camdor and Miratrix confuse me. Yeah, they want the Corona Aurora, but why? Just general power? Okay, but they really don't seem like universe-conquering types. Their relationship also confuses me. Camdor in the final episodes seems to be all about keeping Miratrix out of the loop, doing his own thing, and then claiming he was just keeping her around for funsies all these years in the hopes that she would be useful. But then why did he save her life? And why did he show concern for her in Man of Mercury Part 1? Still, they were probably the most cunning of the villainous factions. They operated by spying, deceit, and manipulation, tricking the Rangers whether they realized it or not. This also fits with the general pattern of guile and intellect they seem to possess, since when the Rangers are going after ancient relics, Miratrix and Camdor are often already one step ahead in obtaining the relic right before the Rangers arrive. You'd think that these two would be the ones with the most development, especially since Power Rangers tends to have a thing where the most human-looking female villain is either reformed or the most complex. But Miratrix is just greedy. She gets locked away in a crystal, Camdor dies, and then nothing else happens beyond that. The villains needed more depth to them. I understand having characters who were evil for evil's sake like Moltor and Florius, but give us more backstory and motivation for Miratrix and Camdor. Give them some other personality that will establish their own agenda and be more interesting than the others. The same could go for the Fear Cats, or at least have them be the watch the world burn kind of villains that even the other villain factions are willing to unite and fight against alongside the Rangers. Before we get to character analysis, here are some final thoughts on the technical aspects of the season. You know about my hatred of Kalish explosions and the bizarre tendency to have laser sound effects when just kicking or jumping, but there's something else that's very odd about this season. I think it happened sometimes in SPD and Mystic Force, but not nearly as much here. Whenever someone's going to shoot a laser weapon or an energy blast or something, they have to yell, "Fire!" as if it was a friggin' Konami laser scope. Yeah, I really have no idea why they do it. It's just another oddball aesthetic with this season more than others. So let's get down to the characters. We'll start with Dax because as a character, he is the one I hate the most. Dax does not develop. You might think he's developing because in one episode he decided to choose being a ranger over the chance to be an actor, but as I covered above, he was really just being a douchebag. Then again, that entire film operation seemed shady as it was. You're cast as the lead in a movie when you're only acting for one day, and I'm assuming an anthology film then, that day being the same day they're holding auditions, and said auditions are outside in the area where you're filming. But whatever, Dax is the worst acted in the entire show. His character supposedly feels unappreciated because as a stuntman he doesn't get the spotlight and isn't noticed. Except really, Dax is insufferable, and even character-wise, he's a terrible actor. He is always always mugging and overacting everything. He puts in unnecessary pauses in his sentences. He was halfway decent when he pulled himself back and just acted calm and naturally, but that was maybe a combined 20 seconds of screen time versus the rest of the show. His best scene was in the 4th episode where he met Miratrix, disguised as Mira, because his clumsiness and awkwardness were kind of endearing to a girl who was seemingly attracted to him. It felt natural and cute. Unfortunately, that's because as an actor, he genuinely is awkward and clumsy. Pretty much Dax's entire character is just saying, "This is like a movie!" And then for some reason, he wants to direct at the end. I don't understand this show. Now let's talk about Will. He is smug, cocky, and arrogant in the early episodes. He calmed down by the end, though early on he also considered himself a one-man show and didn't want the others to work with him. Now in the final episode, he said he's learned to value teamwork, but I see no real development on that front. There was kind of a thing going on after the episode where he pretends to betray the Rangers and join up with Miratrix and Camdor. They would usually go against each other in fights, like they took the betrayal personally, though it was never expanded upon. He was decently acted, but unfortunately, I do not have nice things to say about his actor, Samuel Benta. As I hinted early on in this review, Benta has a lot in common with Will. Namely, that he is a thief. At the first Power Morphicon convention in 2007, the entire cast of Overdrive was there, Benta included. 4 banners were made to be signed by the Power Rangers guests and actors, including ones besides the Overdrive Rangers, and those would then be auctioned off and the proceeds given to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Benta, without any prompting or permission, took one of the banners, got guests to sign it, and then kept it for himself as a keepsake/souvenir of his appearance. He has proudly proclaimed in the past that he has it and will not return it to its rightful owners. Samuel Benta basically stole from sick children. Now, if he's apologized or returned the banner since then, great, but last time I checked, he has not. As such, he can go straight to hell. Ronnie, sadly, has about the same amount of development as Dax, namely none. She has 1 episode devoted to her character development and how she is far too competitive. She moves past it after the episode, and it is never spoken of again. However, the Fear Cats seem fixated on her for draining energy from her for their purposes, so sadly she often needs to get rescued. I picked up little things here and there, like possessing some medical training or how she loves Halloween, but that's not development, that's just a few things she knows and does. She leaves this season exactly as she entered it, happy and a race car driver. Of the Rangers, Rose is probably my favorite character, mainly because she isn't an idiot. Well, not as much as the others anyway. She's at least able to figure stuff out faster than them. The real problem, though, is that we yet again don't see an arc for her even though we have the setup for one. She had to skip over most of her childhood because she was a super genius, not getting a chance to enjoy her youth because of the pressures put on her. Unfortunately, there isn't any real damage there as far as I can tell. She seems perfectly happy and content most of the time. The Pink Pirate sets up character development for her because she got to experience being a pirate, while being possessed admittedly, but still, and had a lot of fun doing it. But then, much later on down the season, well, we get this.
When I was a little girl, I never felt special. No one ever told me I was. So I made a decision that I'd learn everything there ever was to know. Then I'd feel special.
Did you?
No.
What? She was super intelligent in order to get attention? Dear Lord, that's stupid.
Thanks to you, Mr. Hartford. I've learned that being smart, it's something to be proud of.
Again! What? Nobody was paying attention at this point, were they? She never felt ashamed of being intelligent. What abyss of evil did you pull that from? I did start this by saying she was my favorite, didn't I? Well, yeah, she still is. She was decently acted, she rarely said anything stupid, and she pointed out the most glaring plot hole of the entire season.
You're rich. Buy an army.
Taizan, likewise, has plenty of setup for character development, but most of it is jettisoned early and inexplicably. He had the survivor's guilt issues, that was fine, but he got over the teamwork problem very quickly and instead just started being, well, weirdly annoying. What's worse, they set up this idea that he needs to go rescue Vela once he knows she's alive, and then he has to do nothing to find her again. The Fear Cats supposedly had her, but then suddenly she's in Moltor's possession for some reason, and then Norg rescues her in order to redeem his character, the comic relief villain. And Tyzon had to endure no hardship whatsoever in order to find the woman he loves. Great, just great. And finally, there's Mac, who gets the lion's share of character development, especially in the final act of the season. The revelation about his true origins rubbed some people the wrong way, either because they feel it wasn't properly foreshadowed enough, or there's too much evidence of him being a real boy beforehand. While I agree that there probably could have been other hints to it, and there are still a lot of questions raised about it, I thought it was fairly well handled. Mac was the one who was always damn certain of what he wanted out of life. He wanted adventure and excitement. It's reflected in his love of pulp adventure novels, plus how he felt that a hero was someone who always won through no matter what. It's a pretty big identity crisis that's put forth by the revelation, making him question if everything he is or was his own choice or something programmed in by his father. He gets to the point where he refuses to call Hartford his father, and I have to give kudos to the production team for not having it all wrapped up in one episode. Mind you, the problem is that Mac got all the character development. Hell, he was borderline suicidal in Home and Away Part 2 and Nothing to Lose, seeing himself as completely expendable because he wasn't human. He got pretty pissed off at Moltor for the implication that being human was beneath him, since for him, it was everything to him, his certainty of who he was and what he wanted. It's pretty devastating and heavy stuff, and he actually earned his humanity by sacrificing himself in the final battle. Though I would have preferred more resolution beforehand on him saying he didn't want to die or something, since really all he got was the resolution of his estrangement from his father. Speaking of, that brings us to Hartford himself. He's basically the mentor figure of this series, but he's definitely a bit different. For all his protestations of trusting the Rangers and whatnot, he's a very sneaky and secretive person. In the underwater world, he had Spencer disguise himself as a falling victim just to see if the team would rescue him. Which is a pretty dick move for Spencer if the Rangers failed to live up to his expectations. He tricks the team into thinking he fired Will and lies to them directly by saying he's unstable. Spencer was basically his confidant, keeping things behind the Rangers' backs. Sometimes for no reason at all, like when he declared that a Zord project was top secret to Tyzon, even though it was his Zord that he was working on. Still, that isn't necessarily a negative character trait, just an example of how he operated. He clearly does care about the team, and he was willing to risk his own life by being the Red Ranger and fighting alongside them. It's just his character is shadier. Which brings us to Spencer, the best character in the season, bar none. The man's a master of disguise, some disguises better than others, but hey, he can radically alter his voice and body proportions in some cases, which is impressive. He's a snarky bastard too, making some of the best jokes of the season. And frankly, I much prefer genuine wit to slapstick. Teach kids to laugh at cleverness, not because Norg has a cold. He was a breath of fresh air most of the time for what was otherwise mediocrity. To conclude, Operation Overdrive is a mess. If you enjoy the season, more power to you. My opinions about Overdrive are just my own, and you're free to agree or disagree as you wish. But for me, this season was painful, and I doubt I will ever feel like revisiting it for a long time. Will things improve next season? Well, come back next time when we dig our claws into Power Rangers Jungle Fury.
You're the best, Spencer.
If only my paycheck reflected that.